mentioned before how back in 2001 our house was broken into and my PlayStation was stolen, including all my games. Spyro, Crash, even my copies of Reboot and Barbie's Race and Ride. It was my sister's. One thing I didn't mention was how my family's insurance actually paid me out for the theft at around $900. As a 12-year-old in the year 2001, having almost $1,000 to spend was like a dream come true. Now, you'd probably expect me to replace my original PlayStation with a brand spanking new PS2. I wish. See, even with $900, buying a PS2 in Australia in 2001 was just not practical. Why? I'll show you. No, I'm not kidding. At its launch, the PS2 had you spending over $750, and that was before you even bought any games. This is why I never pitied Americans when the PS3 sold for $599 US. Oh, boo-hoo. Even after the price cut, the PS2 here still cost over $500. In the end, I bought a slimline PS1 and spent the rest on games. I wouldn't get a next-gen system until the next year, and it ended up being the GameCube. A move I would actually regret at the time, as most stores in my area barely stocked GameCube titles, instead making space for Xbox and PS2. Back then I wasn't exactly savvy when it came to which system I should get and games I should buy. Heck, the only games I had for my GameCube was Sunshine, Double Dash, and... Yep. I also wasn't savvy about how IPs and licenses work. Back then, I just assumed Spyro was Sony, like Mario was Nintendo, and Sonic wasn't an absolute embarrassment yet. So imagine my surprise when Spyro's new game isn't just coming out on PS2, but also GameCube. For anyone who didn't know, while they were handled by Sony-involved studios like Naughty Dog and Insomniac, Crash and Spyro were both owned by Universal Interactive, and after the studio's contracts expired, they were given back to Universal to be worked on by other studios. Crash was handed over to Traveller's Tales for Wrath of Cortex, Traveller's Tales being mostly known for Disney titles like Toy Story and Mickey's Mania, and even titles like... Anyway, as for Spyro, he was handed to Check 6 Studios and Equinox Digital Entertainment, who are most well known for Title Not Found and Zero Results, Please Search Again. Yeah, I know that now. And like I said last time, I didn't have great access to the internet and wasn't interested in reading reviews. Back then, I was just a 13-year-old kid finding out that his best friend was getting a new game, and it was on my console of choice. So, for Christmas in 2003, I got a copy of Spyro, Enter the Dragonfly. The game actually starts quite promising, with the title screen and music still composed by Stuart Copeland.
Wow! It's just a float, you scaredy cat.
And we've gone straight downhill. The story is set after Year of the Dragon, with Spyro, Hunter, and Bianca celebrating the young dragons getting their Dragonfly Guardians. But then, Ripto shows up, obviously after having reconstruction surgery following being burnt. That's the only reason I can think of for having his face move like that, and proceeds to take all the dragonflies, including Sparks. Only for Spyro to find him just 10 feet away. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw the game, I thought it looked great. It looked vibrant and detailed, despite everyone's faces and mouths. It almost looked like the studio just brought in the original PlayStation models and converted them up. But despite my initial enjoyment, things started to go downhill very fast. Firstly, no, there is no problem with YouTube. The game actually ran with that frame rate. Okay, yeah, YouTube does have problems, but that's not what I meant. Load times were also an absolute nightmare, the worst being when the game tried to load voice work. You just stood there watching the character's mouth move while hearing the game being read furiously. There were times when effects and sounds wouldn't work at all. Running through the metal vases just made the gems appear and the showering animation appeared later. Then there's the main object of the game, capturing the dragonflies. Unfortunately, they were all annoying brats who ran away and you had to catch them with bubble breath. Which leads me to one of the only positives of this game. Spyro unlocks new breaths like ice and lightning that allow him to access new areas of the overworld. But even this is ultimately lacking, as outside of a few exceptions, all attack breaths work interchangeably, all dealing the same damage. The sad truth of Enter the Dragonfly is that there's definitely the makings of an interesting title, but hindered with poor performance and honestly a fairly lacking game design. I remember playing it back in 2003 and trying to have fun, but ended up just feeling bored and frustrated. After I reached the honey level, I honestly can't remember anything afterwards. I don't even think I finished the game. Looking back, I can't even blame Check 6 and Equinox. I don't know what possessed Universal to give this IP to a young upstart company, but then again, Insomniac wasn't exactly a major company when they made the first Spyro. The real issue for me is that Enter the Dragonfly played it way too safe, to where it just came off as a budget generic knockoff to the series I loved. But it never had to turn out like this. The game was originally going to have Nasty Nork teaming up alongside Ripto. It was going to contain 120 dragonflies to collect, over 25 levels, and a frame rate of 60 frames per second. But because Universal rushed them for a Winter 2002 release, what we got was an underwhelming and frankly very short game. The minigames are more frustrating than challenging, especially ones like rescuing cows with a tractor beam, or riding a tank, which gives a whole new meaning to sluggish tank controls. Even characters like Bianca and Moneybags appear once and are never seen again. And rescuing dragonflies has Spyro say a variation of the same line over and over and over again.
Hey, it's Sandra! Hey, it's Jingles! It's Ice Boy! Cute! Akira! Savino! Tashi Station!
John Cena!
Let's hope Tom was paid by the word. Check 6 was actually contracted for 2 Spyro titles, but due to the poor sales, the second game was cancelled and the studio quietly followed soon after. As for me, the disappointment of Enter the Dragon affected me. I didn't just give up on the game, I gave up on gaming, period. For the next few years, I just lost all interest in gaming. My GameCube and PlayStation were packed away, and I focused on other things, like wrestling, anime, and other things. When Spyro's brand new title, Hero's Tale, released in 2004, I had absolutely no interest in getting it. I did get to play it recently, however, though, and it's fine. It seems to be less about visiting worlds and more a basic action-adventure game. Hell, they even gave Spyro an Amy Rose-like character.
Still, it would look nice on an engagement ring, don't you think, Spyro?
Spyro would only receive a reboot in 2006 by Australian studio Chrome, who gave the series a much more epic feel, turning it into a beat-em-up as well. I would eventually get the first game of the series, and honestly, it didn't do anything for me. I found the introduction and tutorial incredibly long-winded, and it took a long time to get to the real action. Even having A-list stars like Elijah Wood, David Spade, and Gary Oldman voicing it didn't help. And yes, I'm aware I just called David Spade an A-lister.
Good one!
After the so-so reception of the Legend of Spyro series and a cancelled CGI movie, the series went dormant for a few years. During that time, Spyro's parent company Vivendi Universal, which also owned Blizzard, merged with Activision to form Activision Blizzard, and thus moving all of Vivendi's IPs, including Spyro, over to the new company. It was here a small company called Toys for Bob would emerge with a brand new concept combining real-world action figures and use them in-game. This would see the beginning of Skylanders, with Spyro originally being the face of the series, taking the subtitle for the first game. Skylanders is one of those franchises I just never got into. I really had no desire to get into that whole Toys to Life series, buying all amounts of figurines and... You see, this is totally different because... Shut up! As for me, I would eventually get back into gaming around 2008. It was thanks to the internet and shows like The Angry Video Game Nerd and Zero Punctuation that I would end up getting a Wii and finally get exposed to all the franchises and games I missed out on. The Zeldas, the Metroids, the Resident Evils. And every now and again, I go back and revisit the Spyro trilogy. While my time with Spyro was brief, it would influence my gaming path for years to come. As this episode gets uploaded, I'm probably reliving those memories with the Reignited trilogy, which we'll discuss next time, in the final part of Growing Up with Spyro. See you then.